Preparing for the appointment. So, because I was going to return something at Walmart, I didn't have the box, I threw it away. I thought I was going to keep the shark, the mop. But, I had looked online and had noted that, technically you're not supposed to return it without the box. But even if you don't have the box, they maintain it. And this particular thing is if it's defective. So I was going to approach it with an angle. I was going to try to get some sympathy, saying, my wife told me I could keep the floors clean even though this doesn't do a good job. So got to just go down on my hands. Do you know of any better way? Asking them for advice. And all being unnecessary, right? The guy would have taken anyways. He just simply didn't care. I know that's not what you're here to hear, right? About how to approach Walmart. So the real thing is, how do you approach an appointment with a doctor? How do you prepare for that? And so I think the first step is you have to prepare, right? You don't just walk in and expect to get what you want. So first of all, think about what do you want to get, right? So I want to go to the doctor to get some imaging ordered, some meds, blah, 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 right? I mean, to figure out what's going on, I think is a little bit too broad, unachievable. It's like KPIs or all these other things. It's got to be measurable. And having someone just diagnose you, that's great. But, I'm a doctor. This doesn't happen very much where you just see Dr. House in clinic, right? First of all, he doesn't like clinic, so he's going to kick you out anyways. But the main thing is you got to have a goal. And then you got to work towards thinking how you can get to your goal. And so what I think is different strategies, right? You got to try to get this person on your side, the doctor. Got to get them to empathize with you. Got to get them to understand what you're going through. Got to get them to order the stuff you want to order, knowing that they have certain blocks, right? So the other thing is you have to understand where the doctor is coming from. And they all come from different areas, from different perspectives, right? Some doctors, I would say particularly ones who have been sued, their main thing is liability. They don't want to get sued. Numero one, most important thing, they care less about nursing staff, any other doctors, administration. But if you've been sued, I understand your main goal in life is to not get sued again, presuming you're still a doctor. And so they're going to do everything in their power. If they had some denial of patients for their request and they had a very bad outcome being sued, reported to the medical board, blah, 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 then they're going to try to avoid that. And so you have to know how to approach them, right? For them, just speaking nicely is probably not going to get you anywhere. The other thing is some doctors are very into the system, preservation of the system. I want to do what's right. This is not indicated, right? Oh, that's too much money, right? It's not worth it, right? I got to save some resources for other people. Those people, you have to also know where they're coming from because they don't want to do stuff, not because they're afraid of doing this. They could care less about doing this, but they have this moral obligation to order only appropriate tests. I mean, I used to be more on that side. I've changed because, there's no such thing as appropriateness. There's no morality to ordering tests, shall we say. But they are very into conserving resources. They've been brainwashed by our training, saying that I can't order the expensive MRI. Let's start with a CT scan. Oh, no, let's start with the X-ray first. Right? So for example, you have a head something. Let's start with an X-ray of your... Who does an X-ray of your head? You're an idiot, right? The least you get is a CT scan. And if you're young, just avoid the radiation and get an MRI. Done, right? But these people are very, cost conscious in a sense. Even though, realistically, whose money are they saving, right? I don't even know. As one person told me, this neurologist telling me I'm ordered tests incorrectly because I ordered them in order. Wait for this result before. He's like, just order them all at once. Who cares about the fact that this test, you knew the result, you wouldn't have ordered that test. Because, you're making the hospital money because this is what they want. And it's true in a sense that the hospital doesn't mind this. You think the hospital doesn't want you to order too many tests? They make money. Otherwise, they really would be on your back for ordering too many tests. So that's not an issue. And then I would say the last doctor is the doctor who doesn't know anything, but that's not a very nice way of putting it. The doctor who thinks they know a lot. How about that? As in, second half is they actually don't know that much. Because those people are very hard to convince. So if they don't know much, you could talk to them, use logic, convince them, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. But the ones who think they know a lot, but they're just wrong, it's hard to dispel misconceptions, right? It's like people have different opinions about the COVID vaccine. You're not going to convince them with logic no matter if you spend 10 hours with them. right? So these people have misconceptions. They're like, oh, you got to do this, right? You just can't use logic. You got to use emotional arguments. Like my friend, when she was in training, one of the hematologists she was with is just stupid. And her solution for everything is getting iron, IV iron. It's a wonderful drug, don't get me wrong. Solves a lot of issues because oral iron is poorly absorbed, not well tolerated, blah, 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 right? Gets your blood count up. But some people actually have too much iron. Like, you know, people who have hemochromatosis, for example, the treatment is getting rid of their blood, throwing it away, right? Phlebotomy every now and then. So they're attending actually want to give this, like that's beyond what she could accept, right? It's like, I mean, you're not hurting most people by giving you an iron. Maybe not so great because there's some effects to the metabolic stuff, but this person, you're actually hurting them, but she can't say that because this doctor is just convinced the IV iron solution to every single problem under the sun. So she got to use other rationales and reasons, right? So that's the thing, you got to prepare, right? And so sometimes you could look up the doctor, sometimes your previous experience, you could guess by what type of doctor they are, where they are, what their background is, if they're in academia, if they're in NIH, they're probably more intellectual, right? Versus they've been in, you know, private practice or whatever, they're more customer focused, but they probably have a strong sense of what you should do. So you got to know where to approach them and do your research, figure out as much as you can about them, right? I mean, it's not the same exactly, but I remember a story of a guy in Nepal. So Nepal is a very poor country if you didn't know. It's one of the countries in Asia that really still hasn't come up too much. A lot of people are still living in extreme poverty. But the idea is that there's one guy and he was very motivated. His family was from a wealthy family a few generations ago. Last generation, the king was deposed, so there's no king anymore. His grandfather was a minister, but now there's no job. His dad held on to that superiority and thus refused to get a not good job, right? So their family wasn't so rich, and his English wasn't that great. He said he's not the smartest guy. I think he's pretty decently intelligent. But basically, Disney was in town. He heard through a friend, and he wanted to interview with them. And the thing is, he's not the best in English. He's not the smartest guy. So what is he going to do? That was a few decades ago when the internet was just getting started, when we just had dial-up at home, sort of. You know, when somebody calls in, you get kicked off. But the thing is, he actually sold his bicycle to buy time at the internet cafe to research. So he actually went to the library, read all he could about Disney, but there's not many books about Disney. He actually researched what question Disney asked, so he could memorize what other people said. He could practice and prepare for those questions. And actually, he made it to Disney, but they only chose 3 people out of, the whole city of Kathmandu, which is definitely millions of people. But the person who gave him the good news was sure to tell him that you're not the smartest nor the best at English, but you tried the hardest and that's why we're choosing you. I think that's one thing that we can do to prepare for these appointments, right? We could try really hard to prepare, and then you'll increase your chance of success.